Okay, Emma, you're up.
Okay, you ready for another one?
Yeah.
Okay. How forward do men actually want women to be? I've heard men say before that they like women making the first move, but in practice, most women, and myself included, feel that this doesn't always go well. And kind of along with this lines, there's this idea out there of, if he wanted to, he would. If he was interested, he'd make a move or he'd pursue you. So if that's the case, do you actually want women making moves? Do you want them being more forward? Or are you kind of in the mindset of, hey, if I like you, I'll do something about it. If not, don't don't come over here.
Connor, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I can. Um, I I think it probably depends on the guy, on how like outgoing they are, how comfortable they are asking girls out. I was always fine making the first move, but that's also where like reciprocation comes in. Like if I'm trying to make a move and the girl is just kind of aloof or doesn't really do much with it, then I usually lose interest quick and just find someone who will reciprocate. Um, but yeah, I'm always comfortable making the first move and uh, going for it. But I don't mind if women are forward at all. Um, but yeah, I guess I've just gotten used to making the first move. One thing I do really appreciate though, and I don't know if I'm in the majority with this one, but if I ever asked a girl out that wasn't interested, I always like none of them ever really did this, but I would have always appreciated if they were just like, you know what, I'm actually not interested. Um, so no, I don't want to go on a date. I think pretty much everyone, if I asked them on a date whether they're interested or not, said yes, and I would have been totally fine if they weren't actually interested, if they just told me no. Because then it saves time, it saves, um, like, I guess, stress from wondering if you should ask them on a second date or third date or anything like that. But I know that there are probably a lot of guys out there who maybe don't really like putting themselves out there to ask someone on a date, and maybe they would appreciate girls being forward and maybe asking them out. But I never had a super strong preference. I was just fine with typically making the first move.
Okay, awesome. I am curious. I think that's really interesting, that thing you brought up about women saying no if they're not interested, because I've asked a few guys about this before. I've heard mixed reviews. I feel like, at least me, just kind of in the culture I was raised in, I think there's this narrative that women are told that if a guy asks you out, you should say yes and you should give him a chance even if you're not interested. And that's kind of was just taught to me as that's the polite thing to do. So it's interesting. I have heard a couple guys say that they'd prefer that someone just says no right off the bat. It does go back to a little bit, I think, what we were talking about that initial attraction stuff. There are people that I've been initially attracted to that I've gone on dates with and been like, just kidding, not really interested. But there have also been people where I haven't been super jazzed about the date. I was kind of like, okay, like I'll go, but wasn't feeling super invested or excited. And then afterwards been surprised and had a really nice time. So I do think there's some merit in, giving people a chance, but I do think that's interesting to know that from a male perspective, if you're sure you're not interested, that a lot of guys would maybe prefer that you just be upfront about that.
Yeah, and I guess I do need to add to that. I am, I guess in that regard, a bit of a hypocrite because there have definitely been times where girls have asked me on dates that I wasn't necessarily super interested in. I said yes, but my thought process was girls usually don't ask guys on dates. I don't want to ruin their experience with asking a guy on a date, so I'll say yes so that they don't get discouraged from asking a different guy on a date. Which I don't know if that's a great way to think about it at all. But
No, Connor's starting to
there
understand.
there were there were times though that I did say no, but most of the time I said yes. And now that I think about it, that could also be the way that girls go about it. They just don't want to hurt a guy, and so they go on a date and then let it trail off. But I guess yeah, so maybe I'm going back on what I said before a bit. From my perspective, it would have been nice just to not have to go on dates that girls didn't want to go on. But I do understand why they say yes, even if they don't want to go.
Yeah, Connor's starting to enter the female labyrinth here because again, just like the restaurant, every single interaction we have, all these decisions we're making, we're overthinking it 100%, right? So if a guy asks us out and we're not invested, it's, well, I don't want to make him feel rejected or hurt his feelings. It's, well, maybe I'm not giving him enough of a chance. Maybe if we go out, I really will like him. But then it's also, I don't want to lead him on. I don't want to give him false hope, but I'm not really sure. Do I really know him well enough to make that decision? So, it's just a circus. And I don't really have a conclusion to that other than it's just a wild time. We're trying.
It's a process.
Yeah.
But there is merit in just saying no, right?
I think so.
I mean, the older you get, the less social energy, or I'll speak for myself, the older I get, the less social energy I have. And then time is more limited as well. So if there's someone that I know I'm not interested in, isn't it kinder to just say no?
Yeah, and I do think this has changed with age. Like, I think, in high school or early days of college where I was dating more to get practice dating and to get to know people versus looking for a spouse, I felt like I should definitely say yes more and give people more of a chance because that was good practice opportunity, and I didn't feel like, in high school, I'm not leading someone on of being like, oh, I'm going to be your wife. It's just kind of like we're all learning how to awkwardly slow dance together. We're all in it, But yeah, I do think the older I've gotten too, I think the more I've felt comfortable expressing interest to other people and telling them how I feel, because I do think kind of what Connor was saying at the beginning where, if a girl's not reciprocating, he said, I just kind of move on. I'll go find somebody who is interested. And I do think that it's easier if you're able just early on to be able to kind of lay everything out on the table and be like, hey, I'm interested. Person's either going to be interested too. Great, you can get to know each other better. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. Or they'll say no, and, at that point, you're not super invested. It's just kind of like, all right, bummer, but we move on. So, yeah, I do think that there is a lot of merit in just telling people how you feel, whether that's that you're interested or not. And so I can see multiple sides to it, but I do definitely think that just expressing where you're at is always a good rule of thumb.
Yeah, I agree. This is one thing that I really do love about getting older and dating. Everyone is getting more authentic and genuine because people just don't want to put up with the games anymore. So it's like, okay, let's just be real. Let's not waste time. And let's be honest with each other, which I think it's kind of nice. I did have some thoughts on this question as well. I think how forward you want a woman to be, it all has to do with the balance of interest, because if there's any large discrepancy in the interest, then obviously there's going to be awkward interactions. And so, having women ask a guy out, if the woman is way more interested in the guy, then there's going to be some awkwardness. If the guy is way more interested in asking a girl out, there's going to be some awkwardness. But if there is mutual interest and you both feel it, then having a woman ask a guy out, I think is super attractive to me. And then once you're in a relationship, it's kind of the same thing. If the woman plays an equal role in reaching out to the guy, and the guy is also doing it as well, like I don't want it to be unbalanced that way. I think that's very attractive and is very validating for me when I know it just shows me that the woman is interested in spending time with me and hanging out. But again, that's if there's mutual interest, which is hard to know when you haven't gone on a date with someone. But I think especially later in a relationship, when you both know that you're interested in each other, I think it's awesome when women take initiative.
Great. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think the tricky part then, of course, is you don't know if the guy's interested, right? So I feel like what I'm getting from it is kind of feel free to go for it. If they're not interested, they'll tell you. But sounds like most guys are pretty comfortable making the first move, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't put yourself out there, tell somebody how you feel. And then, eventually you'll find somebody who feels the same way. Hopefully. That's what people keep telling
Yes.
me. This is what my mom says.
I also think as well, I just have a problem with not to get into this too much, but the way that dating is for us nowadays, where it's more like you meet someone online a lot of times and you don't know anything about them and you try and start a relationship that way, just feels so wrong to me. Whereas if you have the opportunity to feel out someone's personality or your interest for someone in a more social group friend setting, that just feels so much more natural, and I think you'd be able to better judge the levels of interest and where you're at with them. But that is just legitimately impossible with I think it's really challenging with online dating. So that's another just challenge of dating in our day and age.
I can't speak too much to that. I can't handle online dating. I just can't do it.
Oh, I haven't done it in years, and maybe I've gone on less dates, but the dates that I have gone on, I think are way better. But that's just me. But I know other people have really positive experiences, so that's just my personality. So, Connor, you're up.
Ah, yes. What is something guys do that makes you instantly attracted to them? And then what's something that they do that makes you instantly unattracted to them?
I know the answer to this question already. It's shirtless pics with fish on boats is the thing that makes you instantly attracted to them.
Ooh, close. I was actually going to go with leopard print and celebrity gossip. But no, I think for me, I'll give a little bit of a more serious one and then one that's maybe a little more superficial and just personal preference. But I think one thing that I've noticed that a few of my guy friends do consistently, that's something that I always take note of and find that's really impressive to me, is whether we're on like a group trip or at a group, like a dinner party or just hanging out, there's a few of my guy friends who will consistently just go and start doing the dishes. And to me, I've always noticed it because it's not like a big thing. They're not making a big deal about it or announcing it. They just jump in and start helping and doing this service. Super hot. We love to see somebody just helping out, right? And so that's something to me that shows a lot of character, though, in a small way, because it's not something that you're doing for attention. It's just showing that, you're there to help, that you're going to put in effort, and that you're just trying to be nice and do a service for somebody. So I think doing things for other people, especially small things that aren't for show, that's something that's really attractive. If we're talking a little more superficial, a sense of humor is a huge deal to me. That's something that's really important and something that I look for in someone. So if we can have kind of a witty banter, a little bit of a rapport going, that's really attractive. Men in suits, that's a big plus for me. I think when guys get dressed up, put a little extra effort in, that's something I always notice. Something that makes me instantly unattracted to someone, I think anybody who's putting other people down or making them feel dumb or excluded, just kind of the way that you're treating people in general. I've noticed that some guys, I think, will, in a group, kind of try to show off either something that they know a lot about or something like that, but it often comes at the expense of other people, and that's something that is a big turnoff for me, is just anything where, the way that you're talking or acting is making somebody else feel bad, whether that's me or someone else. But a few other personal things. I'm a book editor. That's my job. Anytime a guy uses the wrong form of your or to in a text message, I die a little
Oh
bit
God.
inside.
Whoops.
Not writing you off completely. Like it's not like, okay, we can never see each other again. But I notice. I'm taking account. Um, this is another one. Not all girls agree with me on this one. For some reason, I really hate when men wear those no-show socks. You know, like with church shoes and stuff. You know the ones I'm talking about? The ankle socks? I don't know if I'm calling either of you out personally right now. I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
don't like it.
disgusting. I hate that men wear no-show socks with dress shoes.
What
I didn't
about
know
with
people did
like
that.
leather Sperry's or something? Like boat
I
shoes.
don't. Okay, I'd have to see the shoe.
Okay.
Have to
Okay.
see
Well,
the
good
specific
enough.
ankle. But
I
just
don't wear them with dress shoes, but
all right.
just wondering how
Connor's
far
like,
that extends into other shoes.
Connor tucks his feet further under the desk.
send me some pictures. I'll let you know. But again,
Okay.
that's just one girl's opinion. Not for me though. But other people might be really into that. So to each their own.
Emma, when I have another question.
Okay.
When a guy sends a lot of gifts, attractive, unattractive?
Neutral. No
Okay.
comment. No opinion.
I send a lot of gifts to
I do
people,
know
and
this about
sometimes
you.
I think yeah. I just think they communicate emotions really well, and I know that some people don't really know how to respond to them. So
I appreciate the gifts,
That's okay.
Josh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love a good gift. Yeah. But
Connor
when
and I
I say
had a
that,
one time we were in the library together, and we sat down to try and study, and we sat across from one another,
In like the quiet
And then-
music room.
where there was no talking and no noise, and we just sent each other gifts for literally like an hour, and we were just like laughing so hard and probably making people around us angry, and
Love
it
it.
was just what a beautiful moment that was.
Wonderful memory.
We had to leave the room eventually.
I hope you both find relationships where you share that ease of communication with the women you love. I hope someday you find that again.
Yeah. I hope we get to the point where well, I could probably figure out a way to do this, but I'm going to put framed gifts all around my house, I think, instead of pictures and portraits. Just moving gifts like that as a
Okay.
decoration.
So that, if we're talking attractive or unattractive,
And let's move on.
strong opinions.
Okay.
You ready for another question? Ready to
Yeah,
move
let's hear it,
past
Emma.
that? Okay. How do you navigate and establish boundaries with friends, partners, and exes? So some kind of follow-ups with this. You can answer all or any of these questions. Is it possible for men and women to just be friends? Is it possible to be friends with an ex? Do your friendships with members of the opposite sex need to change when dating someone? And if so, how? Really just giving you like a 4-for-1 question here.
These are bloody difficult questions. Gosh. I'll go ahead and start out, Connor.
Okay, thank you.
Can men and women be friends? Yes, of course. Of course they can be. Yeah, I feel like it's when it gets difficult is when someone gets in a committed relationship, and then boundaries get weird there. But I feel like that's in large part just because of culture for me. I'm really trying to work on maintaining friendships with people of the opposite sex who are dear to me in my life while I'm in a relationship, because I think it's really important to not be afraid of that. And I think a lot of the fear that comes from being friends with women, for me at least when I'm in a relationship, a lot of the fear comes from like, oh, I'm going to make a mistake, or I'll be like unfaithful or something like that. A lot of that fear is grounded in not trusting myself in my ability to maintain friendships with people while still having a committed relationship. So this is a difficult question to answer, because I do believe there are boundaries. Like, obviously you don't want to flirt with someone all the time when you're dating somebody. I think that would be wrong.
Not all the
Um,
time, just some of the
oh,
time.
sorry. Yeah, no, flirting I think would be probably not a good thing, period. Um, but that's difficult too because it's fun to laugh with other people and joke with other people. So that is a really tough question that I am still trying to figure out. I don't know how to answer that one perfectly. Yeah, what was the other question? Is it possible to be friends with an ex? Oh gosh, I have opinions on this one that probably aren't the same as other people's, but I think when your life has been interwoven with somebody else's in an intimate way, and then you break that relationship off, there's still those deeper feelings at play. And so, regardless of your best intentions, if you continue to spend time with that person as a friend, I feel like those feelings are at risk of being played with a little bit. So, my answer to that question is I think being friendly with exes is a great thing. If you can end things amicably, still be friendly with them. Obviously, you've spent a part of your life with them, so you care about them. You're interested in their well being, but I am not going to spend my time, go out of my way to spend my time with them. That's my answer. Okay, Connor, let's hear yours.
First, I agree with a lot of that. Men and women can just be friends. Um, and then when you are dating someone, I agree with Josh. You shouldn't be flirting with other people or leading other people on or anything like that. Because I feel like dating is, it's not the same as like being married, but it's kind of trying to figure out if that's someone you want to be married to. So I feel like it's also good to be able to kind of just not flirt with other people while you are dating.
Do you guys
Um,
get hypersensitive and anxious when you're in a committed relationship? If you talk to somebody of the opposite sex, do you get really like overanalyze? Like, what am I saying to this person? How am I acting around this other person?
I
Is it
I think
appropriate?
I think about it more like how is this person going to take this if I say this? But I don't usually stress too much about it. Um, and yeah, so I think when you are dating someone, you need to just kind of be true to them and uh, not be flirting with other people. Um, and then as far
Emma,
as
does that freak you out? Do you get hypersensitive about that stuff when you're dating someone?
And I'll speak to this a little bit once you guys are finished because I have a few thoughts. But I don't feel like I do too much, but I also really appreciate and really like very clear boundaries in the different relationships that I have. And so I think for me, I tend to just kind of err on the side of caution. So if I am friends with uh, guys while I'm dating somebody, I feel like I tend to not do much stuff with other men one on one. Like sometimes if we have stuff that we already do together planned, but I feel like I'm not talking to them quite as much or not in the same way. So I feel like I'm not really in those situations where I'm too stressed about it because I think it's just kind of this idea of like, yeah, we're friends and we hang out in groups and we chat and maybe we text every once in a while, but I don't think I usually find myself or put myself in situations where I'm like, oh, what would my partner think about this? What is the person that I'm talking to gonna feel about this? Would they think that I'm flirting with them just because it's not in a situation where that's a huge concern of mine?
I agree about not putting yourself in situations where that could even be called into question. And I think the one-on-one with other people, if you're spending a lot of time with someone else one-on-one who's not your partner, that yeah, I think you're putting yourself in a situation where maybe something won't happen or maybe it will, but you're putting yourself in a situation where that's just a question in question. So yeah, just avoiding
Yeah,
those
and I think
situations I think is
I think even if, you're sure that you trust yourself and that nothing is going to happen, and even if you feel like your partner trusts you. I feel like it's just respectful to your partner, to not be in those situations, not put them in a position where they would worry or would have to worry or kind of question, like, why are they spending all this time with this person, instead of spending time with me? So I think it's just more respectful for everybody involved to be able to have those clear boundaries and just helps you to be able to maintain those friendships without things getting complicated.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that's
okay,
great.
Connor, we cut you off. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, first, I'm just going to say that's a great point about not like spending time really one-on-one with someone else when you're dating someone. I mean, because I feel like it's just respectful to not do that. And then let's see. As far as being friends with exes go, I have done that to a certain extent, but like with exes, I never really just went and hung out one-on-one with them. It was usually because we were in the same friend group, and so we still did stuff together. Because Josh, I think you're right. It kind of can mess with emotions if like you're still doing stuff together, one-on-one. So I've done stuff with like exes in groups, but I mean, most of my exes are married, and once they're like married, I haven't really had any contact with them, which I'm completely fine with. But what was the last question? I guess that's kind of most of it. Yeah, I feel like it's when you're dating someone, it's mostly just being respectful and not putting yourself in situations where, I mean, even if they do trust you to not do anything, like if you're just hanging out with someone of the opposite sex, you don't need to even put yourself in that situation to where they need to exercise trust in that. I feel like the trust maybe should be they will trust that you're not going to put yourself in situations like that. So, yeah.
I guess I totally agree with you guys. I'm going to go back and revise something that I said. I think the trusting yourself around someone of the opposite sex when you're in a committed relationship, I'm not talking about like one-on-one situations, but in the past I've gotten freaked out even being in like group settings and the way that I'm like talking to someone else in a group. I'm just like really hypersensitive about that. I have anxiety about crossing those boundaries. So even in a group setting, I'd get nervous. Like, oh my gosh, what am I saying to this woman? Is it, yeah. So trusting yourself in those sorts of situations, I think to, not flirt, but be friendly with other people, I think is still a good thing, instead of just turning a cold shoulder to everyone of the opposite sex and cutting yourself off to everyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
If you had to like just completely ignore your friends every time you started dating someone, then probably wouldn't have too many friends.
Yeah. Like, we're dating. Let's move to Montana now so that we don't have to deal with other people. Okay, Emma, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I think maybe we've already kind of, I mean, you've talked a little bit about the thought process that women have in overanalyzing a lot of things. So maybe this ties into this question, but why do women sometimes act over the top nice when they're actually really mad at you? And I guess there's a follow-up question. Why do women think that men can read their minds?
So yeah, ask the second one. Wait, say the second one more time.
Oh, the second one is, why do women sometimes think that men can read their minds?
Okay, short answer to both. In most of these cases, we think you should know better. But to explain that a little bit more, so I think typically, and we did talk about this earlier, typically we feel like if we're clearly upset and you're not recognizing it, or just kind of like, what's wrong, what's going on? I feel like typically if women are being defensive about it, it's because they feel like you should already know what's wrong, which means it's probably your fault. But also maybe not. Maybe, again, like if we look at the Harry Potter example, like in that case, Harry could have used some context clues to figir out what was going on with Cho, probably could have put that together himself. But it goes back to, yeah, that idea of just kind of anticipating emotional needs. And again, that's two ways. I think that there's certainly cases where I have expected people to kind of understand how I'm feeling, where maybe they don't have enough of those context clues to do that, and I need to express my feelings more. But I do think also there's situations where I feel like men or just other people in my life probably could take the time to kind of think through and understand how I'm feeling a little bit better. One thing that I think it's kind of similar to, maybe that could help understand, is a common problem that you'll see with roommates or in marriages where I've heard a lot of times someone say, like, oh, my husband is really good at helping clean the house or do the dishes if I expressly ask him to. But we both live here, it's both of our houses. If I notice that something's dirty, I just clean it. Or if the dishes are dirty, I just clean them. Like, I don't feel like I should have to delegate to my husband and say, take the responsibility of saying, will you do this, this, and this? Like, it should just be an equal partnership where we're both anticipating the needs of the house, right? And I think it's similar with emotional labor, where I think a lot of the women in my life are really good at understanding what's going on in my life and kind of thinking through how that's affecting me. So even just my mom or roommates, if they know that I have a really hard day coming up or something going on at work, they'll send me an encouraging text, or I've had roommates buy me flowers before, make me a treat or something, or make me dinner because they know I won't have time. And so kind of like anticipating those emotions and those needs ahead of time. And then I think sometimes women feel frustrated when they feel like they're doing that in a relationship, that they're anticipating what a man's thinking or feeling or the things he's going through, and then meeting those needs, without them having to lay it all out there. And then in return, they don't feel like they're getting that. They feel like the man is expecting them to say, here's exactly what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that, when they feel like they're maybe doing a little bit more to anticipate kind of their needs and address those without the guy laying them out. But like I said, I think that's twofold. I think that it's important to express your feelings and needs and also to anticipate needs. So I don't think that's always perfect, and not pitting that always on men in those situations, but I think that's where some of that expectation and frustration can come into play.
I agree that men can be better about anticipating needs, but you do realize that day to day, like my roommates and I, we are not like, oh, I know that so and so is going to have a hard day, so I'm going to make him a meal. There's like zero of that. Just the culture of the way that we face our challenges is like we kind of do it on our own, and then if things get really tough, you let your guy friends know, and then they come in and they offer support or they help you. It's just very different. So while you were talking about anticipating needs, I'm like, oh gosh, like, yeah, if someone were to anticipate all of my needs and stuff, I would feel guilty that I wasn't at that same level doing those things back. But I think going back to one of our first questions, how do you show that you care about someone? Maybe instead of anticipating needs, guys just show that they care about someone by spending time with them. And in their minds, that's how they show that they care. Like my roommates, I love them. We show that we love each other by just spending time together. And it could be any activity, but we like sitting around with each other and talking. And that satisfies our emotional need. And we're not really expecting the other person to anticipate our needs unless we have expressed it. It's just very different ways of thinking. So I think there's going to have to be like some mutual work being done to find some balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I think that recognizing some of those differences is important, in both your expectations and in your efforts to kind of meet your partner's needs in the ways that they, maybe hope for or expect. And so I think, yeah, maybe if we're talking about this specific example, women can kind of recognize, okay, like, this isn't necessarily the way that men or my partner thinks about things, even though it's how I would handle it or how I would show somebody that I care about them and are aware of kind of what they're going through. And then I think, kind of being open to sharing more of kind of like, hey, here's what I do need from you, or here's what I was hoping kind of would happen, I think can help build that and can help understand. And then for men to realize, okay, this is how women think about things and how they go about things. So if I can put in extra effort to kind of try to see it from that perspective and to meet needs that way, I think meeting in the middle is a healthy thing. And I think it all goes back to communication, right? I think it just takes time getting used to how somebody sees things, how they expect to receive, acts of affection and how they show affection to other people. And I think the longer that you do that and the more clearly you're able to communicate that, you're able to kind of grow to a point where you're able to meet each other's needs.
Yeah, I agree. Communication, time, practice. I think those are all probably helpful things, and learning each other's languages. And yeah, well said. Well said. Okay, last question, Emma.
Okay, what is something that you wish most women either did differently or were more aware of in the context of dating? This one's kind
Connor.
of a freebie. Just tell me what you want me to hear.
Connor, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Mostly just because I feel like I've had good dating experiences. Like the girls that I've like actually dated exclusively have all been great. And there's a reason I dated them. I guess one thing that I'd probably bring up, which I brought up earlier, would just be like reciprocation of effort. That's something that hasn't always been consistent in like the girls that I've dated. Some have been great about it, but just, I guess, putting in similar effort to the effort that I put in, which doesn't mean that they like copy what I do or do exactly what I do, but like it's fun if they plan dates, or if they like suggest, oh, let's go do this, or set things up for us to do, rather than me always being like, hey, do you want to go do this? So I don't know. I feel like, and that even hasn't really been much of an issue with girls I've dated either. But I would say just once, because I feel like a lot of times girls kind of let guys take the reins when it comes to like the initial dating phases, like asking them out on dates. But once you're dating, I feel like you're more of a team, and you're like, I would rather be working together more to get to know each other, rather than it still being like the same relationship where it's like me asking them to do things. That isn't a very clear, concise way, I feel like, of how I just explained that, but just working as a team once you're in a relationship.
Oh, I think that makes tons of sense, and something that I think through past dating experiences has become really important to me is just that reciprocation and that same level of effort and investment in a relationship. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing feels worse than feeling like you are the one who's put in all the effort, and then someone else just doesn't care about it as much. That is a terrible feeling. I would answer this question. What do you wish women did differently or were more aware of in the context of dating? Well, my first answer was be more direct, but I mean, we just dove into why that might be hard sometimes. So I guess that answer is not really, I should pick a different answer.
Invalidated. You're not allowed to want that. Sorry.
No, but I will say that maybe to be a little bit more specific, the best relationships that I've had are the ones where I felt like we met problems together and communicated about them like right off the bat, instead of waiting or building on some tension and just letting it sit there for a long time. Like when we immediately identified a problem, and we talked about it together openly and we're honest about both of our sides, apologized, took ownership, and then moved on. That open communication and like dealing with problems is something that I am really passionate about. So that's why I wrote Be More Direct, I guess, is because I've had relationships where that problem solving wasn't as open and direct because we were just guessing what the other person was thinking, and it was challenging. The last thing that I would say is, even though guys are culturally or socially or whatever wired to kind of just put their head down and work through things, I think I really want validation, and I want to know the good things that I'm doing as well. That's probably just me, but I get really nervous that I'm not contributing to a relationship, or it's difficult for me to recognize good things that I'm doing. So maybe that's an unhealthy, like I need validation, but I do believe it's important to be independent. But if you do notice something that a guy is doing well, just to make sure to let him know that, hey, you're doing a great job. It's like when you go dancing with a guy and you're like, hey, you're doing a great job leading. Maybe that's a bad metaphor, but sometimes the guy gets nervous. They're like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? And it's nice to know that they are doing something right. That's what I would say.
I
don't
agree
think
with
that's
that. There's like, it feels like, it doesn't feel great, especially just like with verbal communication. If you like tell someone like, man, you're amazing, I like this about you, and you're so awesome. And then they're just like, oh, ditto. And it's like, ditto? Like, I felt like I just shared a part of my soul with you, and you're like, yeah, you too. It's like, so I guess that goes with reciprocation, but also the validation, like verbal validation is nice.
Which I need to be better at as well. I think that's not just for women, but it's just so interesting when you're dating someone. A lot of it is selfish when you start out. At least for me, I will admit a lot of it is selfish because it's like, how is this person helping me, fulfilling my needs? What are they adding to my life? And then eventually I hope it would merge into like, I actually really do love this person and I care about them and I'm more interested in their well-being than my own. And I want to make sure that they know how much they mean to me. And hopefully I would remember to validate them in all of the good things that they're doing.
Yeah, and I think women need that as well. I think as we established, I think just everyone in dating, we're all overthinking things. We all obviously are interested in these people and care about these people and what they think of us. So it's vulnerable and scary to, put yourself out there. And I think you're trying your best. And so having that validation that, you're great and I still like you and I still care about you and here's what I appreciate you doing, I think is really encouraging and kind of helps to build that foundation just of trust and of that equal partnership. So I think that's great. Effort and communication, who knew? Who'd have thunk that's what people want out of a relationship?
Yeah.
I think we just solved dating. Not to make old themes. I think that we did it.
Wow.
Easy. It's
the
just
enigma
that simple.
machine that is dating, we've solved it.
It only took like
we should probably be awarded some Nobel Peace Prize or something. I don't know.
Probably.
Wow. Well, I was going to say that in a year or two, it would be funny to come back and have the same conversation if answers would be different, and probably or after we all get married and it's like,
maybe. I don't.
Yeah. After we get married, we're like, oh, this is different than I thought it was going to be. Or, yeah. So that's just the nature of life and relationships and, learning to adapt and stuff. But Emma, thank you so much for joining us. We love Emma. We love having you here. You're a wonderful person. Connor, you are also a remarkable man. So thank you for, don't. That's okay. I'm fine.
I'm
but
single.
But I really did enjoy these questions and enjoy thinking about it, answering them. And so I appreciate both of you guys taking the time to write out answers for them. And I guess that concludes this episode, and we will see you next time.